Hey friends, how's it going? So in today's video, we will talk about the best care possible for betta fish. Betta fish is a fish I've kept pretty much my entire life. As far back as 28 years ago, I had my first betta fish. And for today's video, we have our newest betta in this aquarium. And his name is Transit. I know it's a strange name for a fish, but the first time I saw him, I just thought of what better name than Transit. Now the reason I got this fish, and you will probably say, but Isabella, there's nothing like interesting to this betta. Yes, I fully agree with you guys. There's nothing super interesting about his coloration or his fins. In fact, I'm not even sure if it's a male. It could possibly be a female. Now he or she is hiding behind the rock structure. But let me tell you first why I chose this particular betta out of a whole huge array of beautiful, colorful, long fins, short fin bettas. Now my supplier had many gorgeous bettas. We're talking Dumbos, dragon scales, super giants, anything you can imagine of. But in my past experiences, these fish do not last as long as I wish. Especially Dumbos and dragon scales, their lifespan, in my experience, and it could be different from anyone, but in my experience, and my friend also shared that with me, it's about 6 months to a year. If you keep them longer than that, my God, you got someone, you got very lucky. Because the more modified your betta, the more chances of their genetics being so like inbred that there's not much health left in them. So when I did see Transit, which right now is behind the rocks, so I will show you these gorgeous mystery ivory snails. When I chose him, I'm like, I want a fish that lasts a long time. Possibly I could breed to a nice female. And if it's a female, well, we'll find her a nice male. I haven't seen a white dot underneath the belly fin, so I'm not sure it's a female. In the store, it did look like a male per se because of how vigorous it was, and it was staring at the glass of its tiny bowl and just like trying to lunch on me. So it could be either way. So first and foremost, I set up this aquarium to make this betta happy, and I will teach you today how to set up a betta aquarium to make your betta happy also. So, ideal aquarium and size. The ideal aquarium and size for a betta fish, oh, now here she is back, welcome closer, is 2.5 gallons. But we can definitely round it up to 2 gallons. 2 gallons is enough. Between 2 gallons and 30 gallons, you can keep one betta. More than 30 gallons, we'll get back to this. All right, so often in pet stores, they keep them in tiny jars. But I want you to understand that a betta is not supposed to live in a tiny jar in its entire life. It will do okay in a smaller space. It's not really the space that is the issue. It's more or less the filtration, the water quality, and the heat. So your minimal size tank, I would suggest it being between 2 and 20 gallons. Like, honestly, this is a good size, especially for one male betta. If you have a female sorority, meaning multiple females only in an aquarium, I suggest 20 gallons, 30 gallons, and more. And the sky's the limit how much more you want to offer to your bettas. What is important, absolutely important, is that your tank is actually shallow. Now, if I show you this aquarium, this is a 20 gallon and it's not completely filled. It's filled to 10 inches high. The reason I did that, and the reason you should absolutely keep bettas in a shallow tank, it's where they come from originally, which is Vietnam and Thailand and all this region. They live in rice fields, meaning they live in very shallow waters. And they do not like to dive very deep in the water. They like to stay near the surface and hunt for some bugs, some small invertebrates, for insect larvae. And they also have what is called the labyrinth organ, which is basically behind their gills and allows them to breathe the air of the outside. So they really are a top surface fish. They also do have gills, so yes, of course, they can breathe the air inside of the aquarium. This one barely ever comes up to get any air, even though you don't really see it at the current moment that I'm recording this. Take my word, there's a Betta in there somewhere. We're just gonna like focus on other inhabitants for now, okay? So in the last week or so, I went to do a new client, and he was keeping a Betta in a maybe 30 or 40 inch tall, narrow aquarium. And needless to say, I did mention not to keep them in such deep aquariums, because if there is food to go get, if you put food in the aquarium, it's very exhausting for them to dive that deep to retrieve the food and then to get back to the surface in time. But needless to say, this Betta has passed since. So it causes them enormous stress to live in a very deep aquarium. There's no point for that. Also, another cause of stress of Bettas is flow. Let's speak about filtration. The best type of aquarium filters for a Betta, and I'll just go to the top, very top here. The best types of filtration for a Betta are filtration that do not create too much movement in the aquarium. Now, the two methods I like to use are sponge filtration, meaning with the use of an air pump and just circulate air through a sponge. It's basically a small, gentle suction motion that happens, water going through the sponge and then bubbles coming out. I'm sure you've seen that before. Also, a very slow canister filter. I highly recommend canister filters versus hang-on filters, because the hang-on filters will agitate the surface way too much. And in this case, why I'm showing you this big fern, it's because this is my natural waterfall. It's so gentle, you don't even see any agitation of the surface. Let me come a little closer to show you my surface, the water. Now, as you can see here, hold on, maybe you won't see. I have a canister filter. It's a Marlin. I got it off Amazon Canada. So it's a small canister filter. I'll actually go underneath and show you. It looks kind of like this. It's small, but it's very dark in there, so you won't see it. And what I did in this case was I used this flower pot with a fern, and I have biomedia inside, you know, such as lava rock and things like that. And basically the outtake is pumping through the bottom of that flower pot, meaning there's water coming through. You probably see the little tiny trickles right here. See, so it's coming from little holes at the bottom of the pot. So basically it's a filtration, and it's also, you know, plant filtration, biomedia filtration, and it prevents the surface from being agitated. Also, the plants that live on the surface do not like when there is any agitation. It prevents their growth. So it is a win-win for the Betta and for the plants. So these two modes of filtration are absolutely wonderful for Bettas. Things that I don't recommend are power filters, hang-on back filters. I mean, a hang-on back could be good if you create like a waterfall, same thing like that, make it fall onto a rock and then into the tank, or set it up very, very slowly. But other than that, just do not agitate your water, because it's not that they're bad swimmers. It's just not in their making to be swimming against the current, and it just causes unnecessary stress. I'm talking about Bettas, but there's barely a Betta in the shot. He is in the back there next to the don't worry, it's not sucked into it, it's just staying there. So let's focus on these guys. Now, as for temperature, temperatures should stay stable between 25 to 28 Celsius, or how should we say, in Fahrenheit, that would be 75 to 82. So preferably warmer waters, because where they come from is warm. Why you have to keep it in a heated aquarium versus a fishbowl is in the fishbowl, their lifespan goes drastically lower because of the colder temperatures. The metabolism slows down, they can no longer feed as well and assimilate their food as well, and overall it's not very good for their making. So you do have to heat your tank. I do have a heater in the back. It's a very small heater. I set it up at 26. And since there's not much movement, there's not much evaporation either. So the water temperature stays pretty stable in here. Okay, so aside the temperature, what's their lifespan? Let's talk about what's their lifespan. Generally, bettas, it will really depend on what type of betta you have. Like I said in the beginning of the video, some bettas will just have a heart attack after 6 months because they're so inbred. But the natural betta, the closer to the real splendens of the wild, they can last up to 5 years, so between 1 and 5, 6 if you're lucky. My bettas usually last 3 years maximum, so that was my luck. Maybe you can do things a little bit better and have better luck. Speaking of their longevity, I know there's still no betta in the shot. I promise I'll make separate clips of it at the end of the video. All right, we have a deal. All right, so to keep your betta lasting a very, very long time, and I'm gonna do my best trying to find this damn betta, only feed it every second day. When they're babies, you can feed them every day. It's not a problem. But adult bettas tend to have bloat. The food that's commercially fed to them creates bloat. So I prefer feeding them once every 2 days once they're adults, just to let them process one batch of food and not overfeed them and give them bloat. They often end up with bloat and dropsy. So if you want to avoid your bettas from dying prematurely of bloat or dropsy, which can be like the same cause basically, just feed them every couple of days. Also, things that you can do in order to never really have to feed your bettas. While I'm zooming on the tiny little things, hold on, I'll show you. So in this aquarium, I on purpose keep a very, very tiny live snails. And when they freshly hatch, they feed the betta. The betta can eat them. So there's no need for me to really feed this aquarium, because after my water changes, the plants, they make some new shoots and they release some older leaves, as you can see here. They make some more algae and the snails will eat it. And then they will breed and make baby snails. And then the betta will eat it. Same you can do with tiny shrimps, such as cherry shrimps and any shrimps you can keep. There's always going to be some that will make it to adulthood, but some will just go to feeding your betta. And guess what my betta was just doing? It was feeding on baby snails stuck inside the bush. That's why you never get to see my betta, because it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. It's hunting in the little grasses we have here, just like in their natural habitats. So that's pretty fascinating when you can create an aquarium that's self-sustaining. The only thing you really have to do is clean out the filter every couple of months, replace the carbon. You can do small water changes with fresh water. You might need to dose a little bit of fertilizer for your plants, but overall it's extremely easy to take care of a betta in the proper setup for them. Now, going back to something I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and I'm really happy to see this betta right now in the shot. Can you keep multiple bettas together? Well, I did make a very controversial set of videos, pretty much pioneering YouTube about the subject of can you keep multiple bettas in an aquarium. So here's the first video of the series. Just here I'll mark it. This caused a lot of controversy, but All in all, that setup was extremely successful aquarium setup where I have kept multiple males, many females, double the females than I had the males, and they managed to even breed and have babies in that aquarium. Yes, I had a separator while there was a nest, and even through the separator, the female jumped and the eggs were fertilized. And I had baby bettas a couple months later that I released from the separation and that grew up with the adults. So yes, it is possible. Now, I'm not saying put a dozen wildfire placots in a 30-gallon. No, that will not work. But any line-bred embellis, you know, the ones that I mentioned that pop a heart attack after like a couple months, those ones are usually like the aggression is basically bred out of them. Those you can have like 3 males, I would suggest, and maybe 10 females in a 30 or more gallons. Nothing less than 30 gallons though. That's where I did my experiment and it did work. Nothing less than 30 gallons. It has to be long and shallow. And if you can afford to get bigger and more, of course do that. Very super duper important, and I hope I can get it from this shot, is to plant it extremely well. Plant it like it's gonna be a jungle. Make sure you have good soil for your plants to actually grow in, but plant it well in order for them to make territories and, you know, not see each other's face if they're pissed at each other at some point. That's my recommendation on the subject. And if you see that some of your bettas do not get along, just prepare another aquarium for those bettas. Don't force them to interact. Like I never said force your bettas to become social. Give them a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, if you see it's working well. And if it is, keep them together. If not, prepare another 2.5 gallon for the one that doesn't work with them. It's not expensive to get. It's not hard to set up. I mean, I set up this aquarium within the last 24 hours. I mean, it was already planted, yes, granted. I just didn't have anything in it. I didn't have the waterfall. I didn't have the tall bush plants on the right. I didn't have any of this stuff. But I had the aquarium and I had the grasses. So, am I gonna put more bettas in here? It depends on the gender of this actual betta. Once I figure out what transit is, maybe for the summer I will breed with whatever gender I have to. But that's not my main intention. My main intention is just to have one happy betta in here. And yeah. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Very glad to have you here with me. If you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get my latest notifications. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.